Hi everyone, welcome to Acres of Clay Kitchen. The other day I was talking with my aunt and we were discussing canning, and it reminded me that I haven't canned dried beans in quite a while, and that I need to do that before the garden season starts and things get really busy. So today, being a very cold, rainy, windy day, I thought it would be a perfect day to can up some dry beans. I'm going to be walking you through step-by-step process of how I can dry beans. Today I'm going to be canning black beans and navy beans. I'll be doing them separate because I don't want to mix them. So in order to do that, I have to have two separate bowls, two separate pots for cooking them in, but that's okay. So first of all, you're going to start with beans. How many ever beans you want to can. Today, I'm not doing a big amount. I'm doing more black beans than I am navy beans. I like to use black beans in pint-sized jars. Navy beans I normally do in quart-sized jars, but it is handy to have some in pint size. And since I'm all out of navy beans, I just thought I need to get these canned up. What I'm going to show you is good for all dry legumes. All of your dry beans can be processed this exact same way. So this doesn't just qualify black beans and navy beans. You can use kidney beans, pinto beans, black-eyed peas, anything like that. So it's not just for these, okay? These are the beans that I'm using. What I did last night was go ahead and covered these with water and I'm soaking them. Now I also added a little bit of apple cider vinegar to these, and let me explain why I did that. The reason that I added apple cider vinegar to the water when I'm soaking them is because all of your beans, all of your legumes, all of your nuts and your seeds have what's called phytic acid on the outside of them, or phytates. And phytic acid is good for the seed itself. It's kind of a protector. It stores in phosphorus for the seed itself. So when that seed, like these seeds, these are actual seeds that can be planted and they will germinate and they will grow. Well, the seeds themselves, once they are planted, then they germinate. It's like that protective coating of phytic acid is kind of degraded with the soil and the moisture. Once that seed germinates and it starts to grow, then phosphorus is released so that little plant can start taking on that nutrient. But for us, when we eat these beans, they need to be pre-soaked. And pre-soaking, cooking, and fermenting any type of beans, seeds, or nuts, those break down that phytic acid. And I add just a little bit of apple cider vinegar to it to help make sure that that phytic acid is broken away. It's easier for us to digest. It's easier for us to absorb those nutrients, the zinc, the iron, the calcium, and all those minerals that are in these beans and the nuts and the seeds. It's all easier for us to digest. So that's why we soak it first of all. So these have been soaking for probably 14 hours, I'd say. You can soak them anywhere between 12 and 24 hours. After 24 hours, the beans will start to ferment. So if you are going to soak them for longer than 24 hours, put them in the refrigerator and that will keep them from starting to ferment. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take my beans that have been soaking in their vinegar and water solution, and it's only like a tablespoon of vinegar splash for a big bowl. If you don't have apple cider vinegar, you can use salt. Put a teaspoon of salt in here, or you can use whey. All three of those act as a medium to break down phytic acid. Now I'm going to go ahead and rinse these, drain this water off and rinse them. And you'll notice that once you soak them, a lot of times the skins will break or they'll start to peel off, and that's perfectly normal. Before I actually started the soaking process, I washed the beans and picked out any foreign objects out of them. So you want to do that before you even soak them. Okay, here's my soaked beans. Then I'm just gonna stick them in a big stock pot. Then I'm going to add enough water to cover them. There's no set measurement for the water. It's just enough to cover them, and you want to make sure that they always stay covered while you're cooking them. So I have probably an inch of water over my beans. Okay, so exact same thing with navy beans. Gonna drain it off and rinse them. To the stove. Okay, I'm going to turn both burners on. You can turn them on high or medium high. And we're going to bring these up to a boil. Now what they tell us to do is bring the beans up to a boil and let them boil for 30 minutes. And for me, in my experience, I think boiling these for 30 minutes and then canning them for pints is an hour and 15 minutes. That makes for a mushy bean. So what I like to do is just bring them up to a boil and then pack them hot into my canning jars. So what I'm gonna do is bring these up to a boil and then shut the heat off and process them then. I'm not gonna let them cook for 30 minutes. By the way, my jars are washed. I have them in the dishwasher, so they're still warm. You aren't required to sterilize your jars since these are going to be pressure canned for over 10 minutes. You don't need to sterilize them, but I think that it's a good practice just to have them clean and to know that they're clean and they're hot when you go to put your hot product in them. While the beans are boiling, let's talk about canners. Anytime you're canning anything that is low acid, it needs to be pressure canned. Dry beans are low acid. They have to be pressure canned. They cannot be water bath canned. I'm going to be using, my canner is an All-American, I think it's a model number 921. I can't quite remember. The model number is been wiped off of here long ago, but mine's a double stack. I can do 2 layers of pint-sized jars, not quart, just pint. So it holds 7 quarts, and I believe it's 18 pints. And for my altitude, I'm going to be using 10 pounds of pressure, and pints will be canned for 75 minutes. Quarts will need to be canned for 90 minutes. Even if you cooked them for 30 minutes on the stove, they still need to be pressure canned for that amount of time. You can't take away the canning time for that. And I know a lot of you will probably ask, why in the world do you can beans? One thing I don't like is when the beans boil over. So I'll be right back. A lot of people are probably going to ask me, why in the world do you can beans? Number one reason, it is a money saver. You can buy dried beans like by the pound. They're like $1 a pound, sometimes less than that if you buy bulk, and that makes for a very cheap can of beans. Very healthy, there's no additives. If you go to the store and you buy beans, I do believe that there's additives added to beans. Not 100% because I don't really buy beans already in a can, but I think I've looked before and there was some type of preservative. Also, it is a time saver. We love to eat black beans in different salsas, different dishes with rice. The navy beans, we like to cook them up and use them as baked beans or in chilies or any kind of dish like that. And it just is so handy because a lot of the times I don't remember to pre-soak the night before, or I'm not actually thinking that far in advance for what's for supper. Having jars of beans already ready to just heat up and use is very much a time saver for me. So I like to have them on the pantry shelf at all times when possible. Alright, here we are. I have everything set. I have 2 quarts of water heating in my pressure canner. Mine calls for 2 quarts. You'll have to check with yours to see how much is recommended, how much water, but I usually use 2 quarts. Sometimes I'll use just a little bit more if I'm going to be doing a very long canning process. And that's heating right now. And then the beans, these are the black beans. They have come to a boil, and so have the navy beans. My lids and my seals, which I'm using Tatler lids today. There's still a huge shortage of canning lids out there. I haven't actually seen canning lids on the shelf for quite a while. I do have a good supply of them, but I'm going to save my disposable lids for when I run out of Tatler lids. They're just heating. I like to use them when they're hot. You're also going to want a funnel, some type of funnel to sit on top of your jars, because that just makes it a whole lot easier when you go to fill them. Alright, let's start filling these. I'm going to actually start with the black beans. Sometimes when they boil, they will start to build a foam. I usually don't can that foam, I just take it off. So what I'm going to do is pour the beans right in here with the liquid. Okay, you want to add some liquid. And we are going to leave a 1-inch headspace, which is very important because if you get it too full, it's going to siphon out. If you don't fill it enough, then you're just wasting space. And so this is what it looks like. A 1-inch headspace. I usually just do it at the base of this rim. I'm going to go ahead and fill all of these, and then I'll bring you back once I'm ready to place them inside the canner. Okay, now that I have all of these filled, I'm going to bring a wet napkin or paper towel and just wipe the rims off in case I spilled any. And this I'm also checking to see if there's any nicks or cracks in the rims, because if there is, there won't be a proper seal and you'll end up either losing that jar, or this one's actually a little full, or it won't seal and you'll have to eat it right up. Okay, so with Tatler lids are a reusable lid, and they are a little bit different. You tighten them and then you back tighten just a little, so they're not completely tight like you would a regular disposable lid. So if you are doing a double layer of jars in your canner, you're going to need a second rack. So there's always going to be a rack at the bottom, because you never want your jars to be sitting on the floor of your canner. And then this rack just sits right here. Let me show you. This one just sits right on top of your jar lids, just like this. Okay, we're going to go ahead and place the lid on once we have all the jars in here with their lids on. Make sure that they're all good to go. And we're going to put the lid right on. Now my lid is steel on steel, so I don't have a rubber gasket to worry about, but if yours is a rubber gasket, make sure that fits properly. Also, before I put my lid on, I made sure that the vent hole was clean through, that you could see through it, because you never want to work with a plugged vent hole. And then I just twist these kind of opposite of each other in different directions to make it levelly on correct. Now we wait for this to vent, and once it vents, and what venting is when steam is just rolling out of here. When Once this starts venting, I set my timer for 10 minutes. We let it vent for 10 full minutes, and then after that, we can put our weight on it. Once it starts rattling, we'll set our timer for 75 minutes. And if you're doing quarts, remember it's 90 minutes. I forgot to mention that if you want to season your beans, you can do that before you put the lids and rings on. I don't usually season mine. I just leave them plain. I don't even add salt. So if you wanted to add salt, just add half a teaspoon per pint and 1 teaspoon per quart. All right, I'm not sure if you can see it, but you can probably hear it. This is the steam vent. Don't do this at home because you might burn yourself if you're not used to hot. But this is venting pretty good, so I just set my timer for 10 minutes. So I'm gonna let that vent, and then we'll put the weight on it. All right, timer is up. It's been 10 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and place my weight on. All right, I'm back. So this has started to jiggle. I set my timer. I'm also turning my burner down just a little bit because otherwise it's just gonna jiggle and be so loud and annoying, and it doesn't need to. As long as this stays at around 10, we're good to go. So yeah, 75 minutes. The jars are ready to come out of the canner. They've actually been sitting in here for a few hours, just cooling off. If you kind of let them cool as much as possible in the canner, they're less likely to siphon some of their juices out. So what I did was I let it come down to pressure, so it's at 0 pressure, which takes about a half hour after you shut the burner off. You can remove the weight, and then I wait about 10-15 minutes before I actually start undoing the lid. I'll undo the lid and just kind of tilt it. I have it actually on an angle right now, just so it can kind of let out some of that heat, and I just have it a spoon in it actually. But now that it's been sitting a couple hours, I'm going to go ahead and take the jars out and we'll see what we got. So our first ones here, these are the navy beans. When you take them out, I have to tighten these down because the Tatler lids need to be tightened down after you remove them. You may need to get a towel or something because a lot of the times these are hot. This is the black bean. Here they are. So for about $3, the price of the beans, because I did 3 pounds of beans today, I've got 12 jars.